So Rolling Stone magazine had this tweet, and they said Ryan Gosling is an Oscar frontrunner for his balls to wall turn as Ken in Barbie, and they talked about his best performances. I don't know if he's an Oscar frontrunner, right? Because we have a long time before the Oscar nominees actually come out, so we see what performances will come out in the fall. But I will say, I can see Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling both being nominated for Barbie, which is just crazy to say, but I think it actually comes off. I'll get to Gosling in a second. The one thing I want to talk about Barbie first is the direction and the cinematography. Those colors were amazing. I don't know if they used just CGI or just green screens or they built sets. I don't know what combination of things they did, but you actually believe that you were in a Barbie dollhouse. You actually believe you were in the land of Barbie. It's an amazing thing with technology, and credit goes to the director, Greta Gerwig, who probably will also be nominated for an Oscar, and especially Rodrigo Prieto, the cinematographer. Cinematographers are the unsung heroes of any film, especially a film like that, because they just make everything look wonderful and grand. You know, there's a reason why when you see the Wizard of Oz the colors pop so much with the Wizard of Oz, because it was made back in 39. There's a reason why that thing still pops off the screen, because whoever the director and the cinematographers were back then, they were ahead of their time. And I believe the same thing with this Barbie film. Rodrigo Prieto will definitely win an Oscar for his cinematography. I'm not sure about Greta Gerwig as director, but she most likely will probably be nominated for director. So let's get to Gosling. Ryan Gosling was the secret weapon in that film. I love Margot Robbie. I do. She was magnificent in that movie. You felt her journey as Barbie. She looked beautiful on that screen. The way they lit her was stunning. However, I don't know if that film would have worked without Ryan Gosling as Ken. Gosling had to walk a tightrope as Ken. He had to be vulnerable, but not simpish. He had to be goofy, but not over the top. And there was a point in the film where he can be seen as a villain, but not be hated. Now, that's just for me. Like a female reviewer might have a different take on his Ken, and she might think he was a villain. But for me, I didn't hate the guy because I understood what he was trying to say when he did what he did. Maybe he shouldn't have done it, but I kind of understood why he did it. And that's the portrayal of Ken by Ryan Gosling. I can't see anybody else in that role, right? It's funny because there's been different young ladies who said he was too old to play Ken. And I think Gosling's like 42. And he said, well, he's too old to play Ken. And he was like, no, I think I'm good. But you start thinking like, well, what young actor could have played Ken? And the only young actor I can possibly think of is maybe Austin Butler. Austin Butler is probably the best young actor of his generation. And he has that same thing that Gosling has, where he can do drama and comedy really well. And he could have played Ken. I think he might have been good at Ken. But if we're talking about Gosling as Ken, I can't see nobody else in that role. And he deserves to be nominated for an Oscar. Will he win? I don't know. But if he does win, it's a payback, right? It's a payback for the fact that he didn't win for The Notebook. The Notebook still stands to this day. And a lot of it is the performance of Ryan Gosling. So it'll be a payback Oscar, just like Al Pacino should have won for Godfather 1 and 2, Serpico, and Dogs Day Afternoon. Pacino at least should have 2 Oscars by now, but he didn't win for it until Son of a Woman. And I feel like if Gosling wins Best Actor, even though he's great as Ken, it'll probably be almost like a Lifetime Achievement Award for just his excellence as an actor. Before I go, there's a couple of things that I noticed in the film. One, Lizzo has a song at the beginning of the film. So when the film came out, she didn't have these allegations against her, and the film came out and everything was good for that minute, and then boom, allegations. And I wonder when the film goes to DVD, will they keep Lizzo's songs in? Will they have someone re-sing Lizzo's songs, or will they just replace the song? So I'll be curious to see what they do with Lizzo's song in the movie, because they play an important part in the first few minutes of the movie. The second thing was there was a part in the film where they talked about how the Barbie world is more progressive for women, while the real world is still very male dominated. And they gave some reasons, and that was like, there was some valid reasons in there where women do go through a lot in the real world, and sometimes as men we don't pay enough attention to that. So, but I do think the Barbie world is not as perfect as they may seem, because in the beginning the Barbies ran everything, and the Kens were the Kens. And as Ryan Gosling said in the film, it was always Barbie and Ken. There was not no Ken dream house. It was Barbie and Ken, and the Kens were just there to look buff, to work out, to be on the beach. That was their role, which was fine at the time, at the beginning of the film. But there's actually a lot more matriarchy in Barbie Land, just because the guys really don't have any say. And you see that in the film when someone asks Ken in the real world the time, and he was like, "Oh my God, you actually care what I think?" It was like an epiphany for him, which is very interesting. Very interesting versus matriarchy versus patriarchy debate is a debate that doesn't happen enough of, but there is a debate there. But I will say the one thing the Barbies did do better versus the real world is that they were in positions of power, but the Barbies, there were different ethnicities, there was different races of power within the Barbies. You don't get that as much in the real world. So usually the women who scream out patriarchy, when they're in control and power, they say, well, we're going to be different than the men. We're going to hire differently than the men. And they usually do. But what they usually do is, at times, is they hire a lot of women who look like them, who speak like them. And when it comes to racial diversity of their hirings, it's almost non-existent. They might have a person of color in a position, but for the most part, the core crew all look and talk like them. So in a lot of ways, the Barbies are a lot more progressive when it comes to racial diversity of hiring in a power structure than in the real world. But if I'm wrong, let me know. I don't think I'm wrong, but if I'm wrong, let me know and give me some examples of that. So overall, Barbie, even though I talk about some of these serious things, Barbie overall is a fun film. It's not for everybody, but if you have an open mind and you just want to go get some popcorn and watch a beautifully made film, Barbie's the film for you. It's actually a really good comedy. If you just don't look at it like I looked at it and just look at it as a pure comedy, it's actually a really, really good comedy. Margot Robbie's comedy timing is great, just like Ryan Gosling's. Will Ferrell was in it, being kind of old school Will Ferrell, which is a little bit over the top, which is kind of interesting to see. America Fiera was in it, and she's playing a mom, which is like, wow, America's been around so long since like Ugly Betty. She's playing a mom now. So that's actually really good in her career. So overall, I like the Barbie movie. And like I said at the beginning of the film, Greta Gerwig will probably get nominated for Best Director. But most definitely, Rodrigo Prieto will win Best Cinematographer for this film because the colors and the look of the film was magnificent.